Elena Martinez walked through the crystal corridors of the Galactic Council Station, her boots making soft sounds on the smooth floor. The massive structure orbited Proxima Prime, its walls glowing with soft blue light that came from the living crystal the Vextari had grown it from. She had been humanity's voice here for 7 years, but today felt different. Today felt final. The other ambassadors were already seated when she entered the great chamber. 12 species had built this council together, but Elena could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. The Vextari ambassador sat in his crystalline chair, light dancing through his translucent body. Next to him, the Delphian representative floated in her water-filled sphere, tentacles moving in patterns that Elena had learned meant displeasure. Zephyrinth of the ethereal collective floated at the center of the chamber, his energy form shifting between colors. As the council leader, he had called this emergency session. Elena knew what was coming, but she hoped she was wrong. "We gather today to address a growing concern," Zephyrinth began, his voice echoing in their minds rather than through sound. "The human expansion has become aggressive and destructive. They tear apart worlds for minerals. They build factories that poison the air. They spread across the galaxy like a disease." Elena stood up slowly. "With respect, Council Leader, humans explore and build because that is our nature. We have brought new medicines to 12 different species. Our trade routes connect parts of the galaxy that never spoke before. Our defense fleets protect colonies that cannot protect themselves." The Vextari ambassador, Kethril, made a sound like breaking glass. "Your people destroyed the crystal forests of Kepler 442b to dig for metals. Those forests took 1,000 years to grow. We replanted them with faster-growing trees that the local population needed for food," Elena replied. "The Montari on that world told us they had been starving before we arrived." "You miss the point," said Aquarius Prime, the Delphian ambassador. Her voice bubbled through the water in her sphere. "Your species does not understand balance. You take what you want and worry about the consequences later." Elena felt her heart beating faster. She had prepared for this moment, but it still hurt to hear these words from beings she had considered friends. "What are you asking of us?" Zephyrinth's energy form turned red. "The council has voted 11-1. Humanity must stop all expansion beyond your current territories. You must accept oversight from the council for all future activities. You must remove your military vessels from contested space." The chamber went silent. Elena could hear the hum of the station's systems, the distant sound of water moving in the Delphian section, the subtle harmonics of Vextari crystal growth. She looked around at the faces and forms of the other ambassadors. Some would not meet her eyes. "And if we refuse?" she asked quietly. "Then humanity will be expelled from council space entirely," Zephyrinth said. "You will have 6 months to withdraw from all territories beyond your original borders. After that, any human vessel found in council space will be considered hostile." Elena closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the human colonies scattered across 200 worlds. She thought about the families who had built new lives under alien suns. She thought about the research stations where human scientists worked alongside alien colleagues to solve problems that affected everyone. "You are making a mistake," she said. "Humans are not perfect, but we bring something valuable to this galaxy. We solve problems that others cannot solve. We fight battles that others will not fight. We build bridges between worlds that never trusted each other before." Kethril's crystalline body flashed with angry light. "We have survived for millions of years without human interference. We will survive millions more after you are gone." Elena looked directly at him. "Will you? When the Omega Cloud starts expanding again, who will build the containment fields fast enough to stop it? When the next plague spreads through the trade, Roots, who will find a cure before billions die? When the raiders from dark space return, who will stand and fight while others debate in committees? These are theoretical problems, Aquarius Prime said. The Omega Cloud has been stable for centuries. There has been no plague since the Great Sickness was cured. The dark space raiders are legends. Dr. Amy Foster's reports show the Omega Cloud growing unstable, Elena said. Our medical teams have identified 3 potential plague vectors in the current trade goods. Our deep space scouts have detected energy signatures that match historical records of raider technology. Zephyrinth's form shifted to a cold blue. Human paranoia and fear-mongering. You see threats everywhere to justify your military buildup. Elena reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. She placed it on the table and activated it. A hologram appeared showing fleet positions, trade routes, and threat assessments. This is not fear, this is data. Human vessels patrol 17 major trade routes that other species consider too dangerous. Human colonies provide food for 3 sectors during crop failures. Human research stations monitor 47 potential hazards to galactic civilization, all of which can be handled by others, said the Mantari representative, speaking for the first time. His insect-like face showed no emotion. We do not need human protection. Elena looked at him sadly. Your homeworld was attacked by raiders. 6 times last year. Each time, human patrol ships drove them off. Without us, what will you do? We will find another way, he said, but his antennae twitched in a way that Elena knew meant uncertainty. She stood up and looked around the chamber one more time. These beings had been her colleagues, her friends, her partners in building something greater than any one species could achieve alone. Now they were telling her that everything humans had contributed meant nothing. Elena pulled out her communicator and sent a coded message to Admiral Jake Patterson aboard the UCS Defiant. The message was simple. Pack everything. We're going. Home. She put the device away and looked back at Zephyrinth. You have 6 months, you said? 6 months, he confirmed. Then we will need that time to prepare. Elena gathered her materials and walked toward the door. Before she left, she turned back one more time. I hope you are right about not needing us. I truly hope you are right. Because if you are wrong, there may not be anyone left to help you fix the mistake. The chamber doors closed behind her with a soft whisper. Elena Martinez, humanity's last ambassador to the Galactic Council, began the long walk back to her ship. Behind her, 11 species celebrated their independence from human interference. They had no idea what they had just set in motion. Captain Lisa Chun stood on the bridge of the UCS Exodus, watching the last transport ship lift off from the mining colony below. The planet's surface was scarred with the marks of human industry, but it was also rich with the infrastructure they were leaving behind. Processing plants that had refined rare metals for 17 different species would soon fall silent. The orbital stations that had coordinated shipping across 3 sectors would be abandoned. Ma'am, that's the last transport from Kepler 442b, reported Lieutenant Commander Paul Wright. Colony evacuation is complete. Lisa nodded and activated the ship's communication system. All vessels, this is Exodus Actual. Begin departure sequence. Next stop is New Montana. The fleet moved away from the planet in perfect formation. 300 ships of various sizes, from massive cargo haulers to small family transports. Each ship carried pieces of a civilization that had taken 50 years to build and only 6 months to dismantle. On New Montana, Sheriff Ben Cooper was having the hardest day of his career. The frontier settlement had been his home for 23 years. He had watched it grow from a handful of prefab shelters to a thriving town of 12,000 people. Now he stood in the town square, watching families load their belongings onto transport vehicles. Sheriff Cooper, called out Martha Stone, an elderly woman who ran the local school. "What's going to happen to the Montari families when we leave?" Ben looked toward the hill where the local Montari population had built their hive-like structures. The insect-like aliens had lived alongside the humans peacefully for 2 decades. More importantly, the human settlement had protected them from the raider bands that swept through this part of space regularly. "I don't know, Martha," Ben said honestly. "I tried to convince some to come with us, but they say this is their ancestral land." The truth was more complicated. The Montari elder, Clixthara, had told Ben privately that they were terrified of what would happen after the humans left. But pride and the orders from their homeworld government kept them from admitting they needed protection. Dr. Amy Foster was working 18-hour days at the research station on Titan's Hope. As the head of Galactic Hazard Monitoring, she had spent years tracking potential threats to civilization. Now she was trying to pack up equipment and data that could save lives if anyone bothered to listen. Dr. Foster, her assistant Kevin Parks, called from across the lab. "The Ethereal Collective is asking for copies of the Omega Cloud data." Amy looked up from the containment field generator she was carefully disassembling. "Tell them they can download it from the Galactic Archive. All our research has been available to them for years. They say they can't understand our mathematical models," Kevin said. "Ben, they should have paid attention during the conference presentations," Amy replied. She had given dozens of lectures explaining how human rapid calculation methods could predict cosmic phenomena faster than traditional ethereal meditation techniques. The other species had always dismissed human science as crude and inelegant. Amy sealed the last component in its transport case. The generator could create containment fields strong enough to hold a small star's worth of energy. She had designed it specifically to deal with Omega Cloud expansion events. Without human manufacturing capabilities, no one else in the galaxy could build another one. Captain Steve Walsh commanded the UCS Pioneer, the last human vessel to leave Council space. He had volunteered for this final duty, making sure no one was left behind. His ship carried the last evacuees from the frontier worlds, along with the final reports from outpost commanders. Captain, his communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Davis, reported, "We're getting distress calls from the Montari settlements on New Montana." Steve clenched his jaw. It had been 3 days since the main evacuation fleet had left, and already the raiders were moving in. How many ships? Long range. "Sensors show at least 12 raider vessels approaching the system," Sarah said. Steve looked at his tactical display. The Pioneer was a science vessel, not a warship. They had minimal weapons and no backup. But those Montari families had been their neighbors and friends. "Sir," his first officer, Commander Troy Bell, said quietly, "our orders are to leave Council space immediately. We're already past our deadline." Steve knew Troy was right. They were officially in violation of the Council's exile order. But he also knew that 12,000 Montari civilians were about to be slaughtered or enslaved. "Change course for New Montana," Steve ordered. "Best possible speed." "Sir, that's going to put us in direct conflict with the Council's orders." Troy warned. "The Council wanted us gone," Steve said grimly. "But they never said we couldn't stop to help friends on the way out." Meanwhile, on the human world of Terra Prime, President Kate Johnson was dealing with the political chaos of the Great Withdrawal. 7 million colonists were coming home to a civilization that had grown beyond Earth to encompass 47 worlds. Housing, jobs, and resources had to be found for all of them. "Ma'am," her aide director Carol Young said, entering the presidential office with a stack of reports. "The economics team says we can handle the population influx, but we'll need to accelerate the deep space exploration program." Kate nodded. The plan had been forming in her mind since Ambassador Martinez had sent word of the Council's decision. If humanity was no longer welcome in this part of the galaxy, then they would find somewhere else to go. What about the military situation? Kate asked. General Bobby Turner, the head of Human Defense Command, pulled up a holographic display. We've successfully withdrawn all major fleet assets, but we're getting reports of raider activity increasing in sectors we used to patrol. Let me guess, Kate said. The Council species are having trouble with pirates. Yes, ma'am. The Vextari crystal ships are beautiful, but they're not built for combat. The Delphian vessels are too slow to chase raiders. The Ethereal Collective doesn't believe in violence. Kate looked out the window at the space elevator stretching up into the sky. Ships were arriving every hour, bringing home citizens from across the galaxy. Each ship also brought stories of the infrastructure they had left behind. Trade networks that would collapse. Defense grids that would fail. Research projects that would be abandoned. How long before the other species realize what they've lost? She asked. General Turner shrugged. Could be months. Could be years. Depends on how quickly things fall apart without us. Back on the UCS Pioneer, Captain Walsh was discovering just how quickly things could fall apart. The raider fleet had reached New Montana before them. From orbit, they could see fires burning in the human settlement and signs of fighting around. The Mantari hives. Tactical report, Steve ordered. Lieutenant Commander Dan Baker studied his sensors. 12 raider vessels as reported. Mix of corvettes and destroyers. They've landed ground forces at both the human settlement and the Mantari colony. Steve made a decision that would haunt Council space for decades to come. All hands, this is the captain. We are going to engage the raiders to protect civilian lives. I know this isn't what we signed up for, but it's the right thing to do. The Pioneer dove toward the planet, its small complement of weapons charging. It was one science vessel against 12 warships. The odds were impossible, but Steve Walsh had learned something in his years serving alongside aliens. Sometimes impossible was just another word for difficult. The battle was brief, but decisive. The Pioneer couldn't win through superior firepower, so Captain Walsh used superior tactics. He led the raider fleet on a chase through the system's asteroid belt, using the rocks for cover while his crew transmitted detailed tactical data to the approaching human evacuation fleet. When Admiral Patterson's ships arrived 6 hours later, they found the raiders scattered and demoralized. The rescue was swift and efficient. But the message was clear. Even in exile, humanity would not abandon those who needed help. As the last human ships crossed the boundary of Council space, they left behind more than empty colonies and silent factories. They left behind a galaxy that was about to learn the difference between independence and abandonment. 20 years had passed since the last human ship crossed the boundary of Council space, and Commander Julia Davis stood on the observation deck of the UCS Pathfinder, watching a new world take shape below. A planet had no name yet, just a catalog number, but it would soon become humanity's 15th major colony beyond the galactic rim. Ma'am, her science officer Lieutenant Chris Morgan reported, geological surveys confirm massive deposits of quantum crystals in the northern continent. Energy readings suggest this world could power a dozen systems. Julia smiled. The galaxy beyond Council space was proving to be far richer than anyone had imagined. Without bureaucratic restrictions and alien oversight, human exploration teams were making discoveries that would have taken decades to approve under the old system. Begin colonization prep, she ordered. Priority goes to the mining teams and infrastructure crews. The Deep Space Exploration Corps had grown from a small scouting force to humanity's primary expansion arm. They had mapped 17 new sectors, discovered 43 habitable worlds, and made contact with 6 new species that had never heard of the Galactic Council. On New Earth Prime, humanity's new capital world, President Kate Johnson walked through the halls of the Advancement Institute. The massive complex housed research teams that were pushing the boundaries of human knowledge without alien interference or council regulations. Dr. Rick Barnes, she called to a man in a lab coat who was studying holographic displays of genetic sequences. How are the medical projects progressing? Rick looked up from his work, excitement clear in his eyes. Ma'am, we've made breakthroughs that would have been impossible under council restrictions. The genetic samples from rim-world organisms have properties we never imagined. He gestured to his displays. This sequence from the Helix Nebula creatures can regenerate entire organs. This compound from the crystal caves of Omega-7 can cure neurological diseases that we thought were permanent. We're not just treating symptoms anymore. We're actually healing people. Kate nodded, impressed but not surprised. Human medicine had always been aggressive compared to other species' more conservative approaches, without council oversight limiting human experimentation to ethical guidelines designed by species that took centuries to make decisions. Progress had accelerated dramatically. In the shipyards orbiting New Earth Prime, Captain Tony Lopez was conducting final inspections of the UCS Titan, one of 50 new dreadnoughts that represented the peak of human engineering. The ship was massive, heavily armed, and incorporated technologies that no council species had ever seen. Chief Engineer Pete Williams, Tony called to his technical officer. What's the status on the new drive systems? Pete grinned. All systems green, sir. The quantum tunnel drives can move us faster than anything in council space. The shield generators use energy patterns based on our study of dark matter and the weapon systems. He paused dramatically. Let's just say they're very effective. Tony walked through the ship's corridors, noting the efficiency of the design. Human engineers had always built for function over beauty, unlike the artistic but fragile ships of the Vextari or the elaborate but slow vessels of the Delphians. These new ships were pure human engineering, tough, fast, and deadly when they needed to be. Meanwhile, in the depths of council space, problems were beginning to surface. On the former Montari homeworld, Elder Vexthara was trying to coordinate defense against the latest raider attack. Without human patrol ships, the raiders had grown bold. What had once been occasional nuisance raids had become systematic attacks that were crippling trade. How many ships do we have available? She asked her military advisor. 12 defensive corvettes, he replied. The raiders have 40 vessels, and they're better armed. Vexthara antennae drooped. Before the human exile, a single human patrol ship would have been enough to drive off the raiders. Now the Montari fleet was outnumbered and outgunned. On the Vextari crystal homeworld, Council member Kethril was facing a different crisis. The beautiful crystal ships that were the pride of his species were proving inadequate for frontier defense. Their elegant design couldn't handle the harsh conditions of space combat. How many ships have we lost this month? He asked his fleet commander. 7 crystal cruisers, came the reply. The raiders have learned to target our structural weak points. Our ships are beautiful, but they shatter under concentrated fire. Kethril made a sound like breaking glass. The Vextari had criticized human ships for being ugly and functional. Now they were learning that beautiful ships that couldn't fight were worse than ugly ships that could dot in the Delphian waterworlds. Admiral Aquarius Prime was discovering that her species' slow, deliberate decision-making process was a fatal weakness in military situations. By the time the Delphian Council debated the proper response to raider attacks, the raiders had already struck and escaped. The humans always acted too quickly, she complained to her staff. But at least they acted. Dr. Amy Foster's predictions were also coming true in spectacular fashion. The Omega Cloud, which the Council had dismissed as a stable phenomenon, was beginning to expand. Without human monitoring stations and rapid response teams, the early warning systems had failed. On the ethereal collective's primary world, Zephyrinth was meditating on the growing crisis. The energy beings prided themselves on their peaceful nature and their ability to see the larger patterns of existence. But patterns in meditation couldn't stop cosmic disasters. The Omega Cloud has consumed the Kepler system, his aide reported. 3 billion Mantari civilians were evacuated, but they have nowhere permanent to go. Zephyrinth's energy form flickered with distress. The human warnings about the cloud had been in the Council archives for years, along with detailed plans for containment. But the plans required human technology and human response times that other species couldn't match. Back in human space, Captain Lisa Chun was leading a massive colonization fleet toward the Andromeda Approach, a region of space so far from the Council that radio signals would take centuries to reach them. Her fleet consisted of 200 ships, carrying everything needed to build a complete civilization from scratch. "Ma'am," her navigation officer reported, "we've detected artificial signals from the target system. Looks like we're not alone." Out here, Lisa studied the sensor data. The signals showed a pattern of intelligence, but not one that matched any known species. "New first contact protocols," she ordered. "Let's see if we can make some friends." This had become humanity's new approach to the galaxy. Instead of trying to fit into existing power structures, they were building their own. Instead of accepting limitations imposed by fearful bureaucrats, they were pushing boundaries that had never been tested. On New Earth Prime, President Kate Johnson received regular reports from the Deep Space Corps. Each report showed the same pattern: humanity growing stronger, faster, and more capable than ever before. The exile that was meant to limit human expansion had instead freed them to reach their full potential. "Ma'am," her military advisor General Bobby Turner reported, "our deep space scouts are picking up long-range communications from Council space. Looks like they're having significant problems." Kate looked at the intelligence reports. Raider attacks were up 300%. Trade routes were failing. Entire systems were being abandoned as cosmic disasters went unchecked. The careful balance of the Galactic Council was crumbling without human intervention. "Are they asking for help yet?" she asked. "No, ma'am. Pride is keeping them from admitting they need us." Kate nodded. She had expected this. The Council species had spent so much time criticizing human methods that they couldn't admit those methods had been keeping their civilization stable. "Keep monitoring," she ordered, "but don't offer assistance unless they specifically ask for it." In the research labs of New Earth Prime, human scientists were making discoveries that dwarfed anything achieved under Council oversight. Without alien bureaucrats slowing down research with endless safety reviews, human creativity was producing revolutionary breakthroughs in energy, medicine, and technology. Dr. Rachel Kim, who had taken over Amy Foster's cosmic monitoring work, was tracking phenomena that the Council didn't even know existed. Her early warning systems could predict stellar collapses, cosmic storms, and space-time anomalies with accuracy that bordered on precognition. "The galaxy is becoming more dangerous," she reported to President Johnson. "Without proper monitoring and response systems, more civilizations are going to fall." But humanity was no longer part of that galaxy. They were building something new in the vast spaces beyond Council reach, something that didn't depend on committees and politics and the fear of other species, something that was purely human, bold, fast, and ready for whatever the universe could throw at them. The Council had wanted humanity gone. They had gotten their wish. But they were about to learn that some wishes carried prices that were higher than anyone had imagined. 40 years after humanity's exile, the galaxy was dying. Admiral Pete Williams stood in the command center of the UCS Ascendant, humanity's flagship, reading reports from deep space reconnaissance teams. The messages painted a picture of systematic collapse across Council space. "Sir, Communications Officer Lieutenant Nancy Clark reported, "We're receiving another distress signal from the former Montari territories. The Omega Cloud has consumed their last 3 star systems." Pete studied the tactical display showing the expanding anomaly. The cloud was growing faster now, feeding on the energy of consumed stars. Dr. Rachel Kim had predicted this acceleration. Pattern 20 years ago, but her warnings had been filed away in Council archives and forgotten. "Any response from Council forces?" Pete asked. "Negative, sir. Their containment attempts failed 6 months ago. They lost their entire Vextari crystal fleet trying to establish energy barriers." Pete shook his head. The Vextari ships were beautiful, but they had been designed for ceremony and trade, not for the brutal work of containing cosmic disasters. Human containment ships were ugly, functional, and built specifically for this kind of emergency work. On the bridge of the exploration, vessel UCS Pioneer, Captain Steve Walsh was leading a scientific mission to study ancient ruins in the far rim when his crew detected something that made his blood run cold. "Captain," Science Officer Dr. Lynn Moore called out, "long-range sensors are picking up. Massive energy signatures moving through dark space. The patterns match historical records from the Great War archives." Steve moved to her station and looked at the data. The energy signatures were distinctive, geometric patterns that cut through space-time itself, leaving scars that would take millennia to heal. There was only one thing in the galaxy that moved like that. "Devourers," he said quietly. The Devourers were machines left over from a previous galactic cycle, when an ancient civilization had built self-replicating war machines that had eventually turned on their creators. They had been dormant for millions of years, but something was waking them up. How many? Steve asked. Dr. Moore's face was pale as she studied the readings. "Initial count shows at least 1,000 vessels, with more emerging from dark space every hour. They're heading toward Council space." Back in Council territory, the situation was becoming desperate. On the surviving Delphian worlds, Admiral Aquarius Prime was trying to coordinate a defense against raiders who had grown bold enough to attack core systems. "Status report," she demanded from her tactical officer. 17 more merchant vessels destroyed this week," he replied. "The raiders are using human-designed weapons they captured from abandoned military depots. Our ships can't match their speed or firepower." Aquarius Prime felt the water in her sphere grow cloudy with stress chemicals. The Delphian fleet had been designed for exploration and diplomacy, not warfare. Their vessels were slow, elegant, and completely unsuited for the kind of hit-and-run tactics the raiders employed. "Where are our allies?" she asked. "The Vextari have lost most of their fleet to the Omega Cloud containment efforts. The Montari Republic has collapsed entirely. The Ethereal Collective refuses to engage in violence. On the ethereal homeworld, Zephyrinth was discovering that meditation and peaceful philosophy provided no defense against cosmic disasters or hostile aliens. His species had spent millions of years developing their consciousness and abandoning physical concerns. But consciousness couldn't stop the expanding Omega Cloud. The outer colonies have been evacuated," his aide reported. "But we have nowhere to send the refugees. Every species is struggling with the same problems." Zephyrinth's energy form flickered between colors rapidly, a sign of extreme distress. The Ethereal Collective had been the spiritual leaders of the Council, preaching patience and wisdom. But patience was a luxury they could no longer afford. "Have we heard anything from humanity?" he asked quietly. "Our long-range scouts report massive fleets in the Rim territories, but they're moving away from Council space. The humans show no interest in returning." In human space, President Sam Rodriguez was meeting with his military advisors about the growing crisis. Intelligence reports showed the scope of the disaster unfolding in Council territory. The Devourer fleet has reached The outer edge of Council space, General Bobby Turner reported. First contact occurred 6 hours ago at the Zerion system. President Rodriguez studied the battle reports. What happened? Total annihilation. The Zerion defense fleet consisted of 47 vessels from 4 different species. They lasted 11 minutes against 12 Devourer ships. Admiral Jake Patterson, now elderly but still sharp, pulled up tactical displays. The Council species never develop effective combined tactics. Each species fights using their own methods, with no coordination. The Devourers are adapting to their weaknesses faster than they can respond. What about the Omega Cloud? Rodriguez. ASKED, Dr. Rachel Kim, answered from her position at the science station. It's accelerating. Without proper containment, it will consume the entire Council Corps within 2 years. We estimate 15 billion casualties if nothing is done. The room fell silent. 15 billion lives. Even among the human leadership, who had endured exile and rejection, the scale of potential loss was staggering. Sir, General Turner said carefully, we have the technology to stop both threats. Our Devourer-class battleships were specifically designed to fight the ancient machines. Our containment technology could halt the Omega Cloud expansion. Rodriguez prompted. But it would require moving our entire fleet into Council space. We'd be risking everything to save people who exiled us. Back in Council territory, the first major Devourer attack was underway. Captain Veltar of the Aquarian fleet watched in horror as geometric death machines tore through the combined Council forces defending the Altair system. All ships, concentrate fire on the lead Devourer vessel, he ordered desperately. The Council fleet opened fire. With everything they had, Vextari crystal beams, Delphian plasma torpedoes, Mentari swarm missiles, and ethereal energy pulses all struck the Devourer ship simultaneously. The machine absorbed the energy and continued forward without slowing. It's not even damaged. His tactical officer reported in disbelief. Devourer returned fire with weapons that rewrote the laws of physics in localized space. Vextari ships shattered into component crystals. Delphian vessels imploded as their water boiled away into vacuum. Montari swarm ships simply ceased to exist. Their matter converted to energy. Captain Veltar watched his fleet die around him. In desperation, he activated the emergency beacon that would send a message across the galaxy. This is Captain Veltar of the Aquarian Defense Force. The Devourers have returned. Council forces are insufficient to contain them. We are requesting immediate assistance from any available forces, including... He paused, the words catching in his throat, including human forces. The message went out across hyperspace, reaching every corner of the galaxy. But by the time it arrived at human monitoring stations, the Altair system had fallen silent. On New Earth Prime, President Rodriguez convened an emergency session of the Human Council. Representatives from 50 worlds gathered to debate humanity's response to the crisis. The Council cast us out, argued Governor Helen Wright from the industrial world of New Pittsburgh. They called us warmongers and destroyers. Why should we risk our people to save them? Because it's the right thing to do, countered Admiral Patterson. We're not talking about politics here. We're talking about genocide on a galactic scale. President Rodriguez listened to the debate, knowing that the decision would ultimately be his. Outside the council chambers, human fleets waited for orders. Ships that could stop the Devourers. Technology that could contain the Omega Cloud. The power to save a galaxy that had rejected them. But saving the Council would mean revealing just how powerful humanity had become in exile. It would mean showing that the species they had feared and dismissed had grown beyond their ability to control or contain. Dr. Rachel Kim provided the final piece of information that would shape the decision. Sir, our deep space monitoring shows. Something else. If the Omega Cloud reaches critical mass, it won't stop at the Council core. The expansion will accelerate exponentially. Eventually, it will consume the entire galaxy, including our territories. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about saving former allies. This was about preventing the destruction of everything. President Rodriguez stood up slowly. "Prepare the fleets," he said. "We're going back." But even as he gave the order, he knew they might already be too late. The galaxy that had rejected humanity was crumbling faster than anyone had predicted. And somewhere in the dark spaces between stars, ancient machines continued their relentless advance towards civilizations that had no idea how to stop them.